Being recorded. So officially, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, especially everybody from the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation who are maybe with us for the first time having a webinar with the Marfan Foundation. I'm Eileen Michelli, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Foundation. And as you will quickly learn, my side gig is webinar host, my other job. And so you'll see me a lot. We record this webinar so you can either watch it again or you can share it with other people who are not able to participate live. So we're excited to welcome the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation as a division of the Marfan Foundation officially beginning July 1st, and we should have sound effects for that. And tonight we have the leadership of both organizations to share details and answer your questions. So from the Marfan Foundation, we're going to have Michael Weimer, our President and CEO, Corey Eves, the chair of our board of directors, and Beth Utz, a member of our board. From the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation, we have the president, Dawn Reiner, and the past president and co-founder, Gretchen McAllister, who also neither one of them need an introduction for all of you. And then last, but certainly not least, and again, don't need any introductions with this group, Dr. Hal Dietz and Dr. Bart Loeys. If all goes according to plan, we should have plenty of time for your questions at the end. And so since we're on a webinar and there's over 70 people on, you are all going to be on mute, but you can put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll moderate them at the end. And so just for the speakers, when you're not speaking, you can turn your video off so people can focus on who's speaking. And then at the end, when we have the Q&A, you can all put your video back on and we can all look at each other's faces here. So to start us off tonight, we are going to start with Dawn Reiner from the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation.
Hi, everyone. So happy you're joining us tonight as the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation and the Marfan Foundation begin their journey together. For the last 13 years, the LDSF's operations were solely run by a 5 to 8 person volunteer board. These volunteers passionately dedicated their free time providing a support network for individuals, parents, and families affected by Loeys-Dietz syndrome. They worked with the Loeys-Dietz Medical Advisory Board, as well as other researchers and clinicians to provide educational materials. And they focused their energy on raising funds for research so that discoveries can be made on how those impacted with Loeys-Dietz can live a healthier and more productive and proactive lives. In the last year, the board, the Loeys-Dietz board, realized to continue with our growth and to create sustainability, we needed to make a change, which included a Loeys-Dietz syndrome paid director, somebody who could focus all of his or her working days to growing and supporting our organization. Ironically, a few weeks after the board made this decision to move in this direction, the Marfan Foundation approached us. The Marfan Foundation had recently changed their mission to include related disorders. And of course, Loeys-Dietz was a natural fit. The Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation and the Marfan Foundation have always had a wonderful collaborative relationship. Many folks with Loeys-Dietz were diagnosed at the Marfan conference or were first diagnosed with Marfan and then re-diagnosed with Loeys-Dietz. How many of you have ever seen a new doctor or visited a hospital and you mention Loeys-Dietz and received a blank stare? Then when you mention Marfan, the medical staff has somewhat of an understanding of what you mean. By joining the Marfan Foundation, we will have the resources to educate the medical community about our disorder. We will also better serve our members with programming, research, and community support. We will keep our separate marketing and community outreach programs, including our website, social media, newsletter, and awareness month. We will finally get that Loeys-Dietz syndrome director we realized that we needed, and so much more, which includes a passionate, highly motivated, dedicated group of people who have built the amazing Marfan Foundation and are now here to help support us. So now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Corey Eves, the Marfan Board Chair. And I don't think I said that right. I think it's the chair of the Marfan Board.
Close enough.
Corey.
Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone else for joining us this evening. First of all, on behalf of the Marfan Foundation Board of Directors, I want to officially welcome the Loeys-Dietz community into our family. I couldn't be more thrilled to do that. It's been a long time coming, and we're thrilled to be working and partnering with you. Dawn, Gretchen, Julie, Linda, and the rest of the LDS team, we're really excited about what the next chapter holds for the Loeys-Dietz Foundation, and really just thrilled to have you join our ranks and join us this evening. As everyone knows, these two conditions couldn't be more closely related from a genetic perspective, and share a lot of the same science and research and so on that has gone into both understanding the conditions and supporting our patients in these communities. We also share some of the same medical leaders between the two communities, like Hal and Bart, who are both with us this evening. But more than anything, I think I'm most excited about what the future holds. The mission for the Marfan Foundation is really simple. It's research, awareness, and support for the conditions that we support, and that just meshes perfectly with what we think is the foundation, the mission for the Loeys-Dietz Foundation. The Loeys-Dietz Foundation has done an incredible job building their organization up until now. It's been entirely volunteer-led, and we intend to absolutely keep the best parts of what the Loeys-Dietz Foundation has been able to build. A great website, a terrific online community on Facebook, and a great brand identity. And to be honest, these are areas in some ways where you may be slightly ahead of the Marfan Foundation, and we've got plenty that we'll look forward to learning from you guys. So terrific not only to have you part of the foundation, but also help to leverage some of the strengths we think we can get. From a governance perspective, we'll have two members of the Loeys-Dietz community who will join our board of directors and provide leadership and input into the Marfan Foundation, and the combination of the two. We'll continue the existing work of the Loeys-Dietz Medical Advisory Board, and there will be an 11-member LDS Advisory Board and Division Director. And I think there will be an announcement about this a little later in this evening's program about the new Loeys-Dietz Division Director that will be part of the efforts going forward. Again, that will be a little bit about how the two organizations will come together, and can answer more questions if people have them there. Every great journey starts with a leader and a champion, and in this case, that champion has been our longtime friend, donor, and Marfan board member, Beth Utz. Beth was a co-founder of the Loeys-Dietz Foundation, and her son Alex, who has Loeys-Dietz, recently graduated from NYU at 19, which is a pretty remarkable achievement for anyone. So congratulations on that front. Beth, it's my pleasure to hand it over to you. The great work you've done and helped us build through the years has really led to where we're at today. So thank you, Beth, and over to you.
Thank you, Corey. And I just want to say thank you. Our board chair has been a tremendous supporter of related conditions and thinking outside of the box, which has been awesome as I've joined the board, and specifically, have an extra interest in Loeys-Dietz, since our son, as he said, has Loeys-Dietz syndrome. The last time the Marfan Foundation Board of Directors had the opportunity to meet in person, I read a book called What Do You Do with an Idea by Kobe Yamada. And as a former teacher and principal, I find that books, especially children's books, help open the door for great dialogue. And this story follows a brilliant idea and a child who helps bring that idea to life. And as the child's confidence grows, so does the idea itself. And like the boy, and like the founder of the Marfan Foundation, Priscilla Ciccarello, I had an idea. I shared it with genetic counselor and friend, Gretchen McAllister, and other parents who had children with the newly named condition called Loeys-Dietz syndrome. Gretchen, myself, and this new community of parents and supporters began to think big and brave, just like in the story, and created the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation. Now, we are at a pivotal time for growth and change for both the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation and the Marfan Foundation, where basic science manifests the growing needs of our community. Related conditions, including our newest division, the VEDS movement, and now collaboration with the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation, have distinguished themselves as more than just a tagline. This growth mindset has allowed the Marfan Foundation to look at things and how they work, don't work, could work better, or even do something entirely different to make that idea come to life in order to best meet the needs of the community. I appreciate the efforts of Michael Weimer, our board chair, Corey, staff, our entire board, as well as the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation board, working together, welcoming and listening to ideas, and giving new ideas like this space to grow. This idea, this collaboration and journey is just getting started. One of my favorite parts of the book I mentioned is when the boy excitedly talks about the idea. And he goes on to say, and I don't think you can see my pictures, but he goes on to say, I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. Gotta turn my page. And then I realized what you do with an idea, you change the world. And this idea, this partnership will make a voice bigger and the community stronger. And for that, I'm so very grateful for all of the tremendous efforts, past, present, and future. And I'm also thankful and proud of our son, Alex, who continues to push boundaries and doesn't let his diagnosis define him, but rather challenge him to beat the odds. He has a heart of gold and inspires me to challenge this community to continue to challenge and best serve all. Having said all that, I had the honor of presenting our next panelist, the Heart of the Matter Award, at our annual Marfan conference held in Texas last summer. She can be found answering questions on a variety of forums and platforms on social media, and was wise beyond her years on how to help this 9-month pregnant, almost mom of 6, navigate heart surgery for her newly diagnosed 5-year-old son. She welcomed my growing notebook of questions and continues to do so. She's engaging and a genuine and true patient advocate. She has been a champion for the Marfan Foundation for years. Her persistence and zest to wear different hats has allowed her to excel professionally, yet stay grounded with the families who hold her close to heart. Thank you for helping to grow an idea then and continuing to shape it today. Thank you for your courage, friendship, and being a literal lifeline even after hours. Please welcome my Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation co-founder, genetic counselor, friend, Gretchen McAllister.
Thank you, Beth. Beth was and continues to be this incredible partner and advocate for families with Loeys-Dietz syndrome. And since I've known her going way back, her compassion has just not waned. As Beth stated, we started the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation back in 2005 and have held various positions with the board. You know, my J job is at Hopkins as a genetic counselor in the aortic clinic. And as I was getting ready for this talk, I was just reflecting back on when we first discovered Loeys-Dietz syndrome and we're bringing families back to Hopkins to tell them, you know, you're one of 30, we've just discovered this thing. And at that point, we didn't have years of experience and hundreds of patients to give them advice. They were really guiding us to teach us what Loeys-Dietz syndrome is. You know, and I think it's the same thing today. We really appreciate everyone out there who shares their journeys with us because we continue to learn from you and continue to be motivated to ask new questions. And we're very appreciative of that. For me, the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation has been a labor of love. It's definitely been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's perhaps the most rewarding as well. After every conference, our volunteer board of directors is just exhausted from working so hard, but they walk away every 2 years feeling more motivated and in awe of our community. And I'm so excited that this incredible group of people will continue to work with the new director of Loeys-Dietz division at Marfan Foundation to really expand our services. I've also worked alongside the staff at the Marfan Foundation for many years and have the utmost respect for them, their passion, and their devotion to the connective tissue community. And I am 100% confident that a year from now, looking back, our mission and our vision will be stronger than ever. You know, I feel like my little baby is grown up and is going off to college for new adventures and opportunities, but I know that the soul and the spirit of our community is so grounded. And I know that all the new doors that will be open will just expand our hearts and our impact. So I'm really grateful for this next step. My mind is really swirling with all these incredible things that we're going to accomplish. And so my call out to all of you is continue to be involved, continue to be engaged, because it's going to be a really fun ride. So I have the pleasure of introducing the next two speakers, Dr. Hal Dietz and Dr. Bart Loeys, who are two of my favorite people in the world. They not only have incredible patience with me and all my questions, but I think you all know that their dedication to the connective tissue community is irrefutable. Dr. Dietz is a Howard Hughes investigator and faculty member at Johns Hopkins University. He runs our aortic disease clinic there, and his lab specializes in diving deep into genetic pathways of aortic disease, mainly through mouse models and trying to investigate new treatment strategies. And Dr. Loeys is a faculty member at the University of Antwerp in Belgium. His lab and clinical practice and expertise are in connective tissue disorders, and his lab is heavily involved in gene discovery and expanding phenotypes associated with with Loeys-Dietz and different aortic diseases. I actually believe that Dr. Loeys and I started at Hopkins around the same time, around 2001 and 2002. And it was really there that Dr. Dietz will share a little bit about the story of Loeys-Dietz syndrome and how we come to be where we are today. Thanks.
So good evening, everyone. I have to comment on the pride that I have regarding the amazing accomplishments of Gretchen and Beth in bringing the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation to reality and in serving the cause of individuals with Loeys-Dietz syndrome for so long and so well. You know, people are suggesting that this is a beginning. And I think it is in many ways, but I think it's also a culmination. It's a natural culmination of a partnership and an alignment that I've sensed for a long time. You know, back in 2005, we were seeing patients in our Marfan syndrome clinic that had many features of that condition, but that didn't seem to be behaving all the rules. And there was a sense that we were doing well in caring for them, but in some ways that we were falling short. And it was really that sense of curiosity, ultimately a sense of urgency, that led us to identify the defining features of Loeys-Dietz syndrome, the clues that could allow us to carve out a patient group and say, you know, perhaps you need different rules. You need different guidance with regard to diagnosis and management. But it was clear from the origin of that realization that these conditions are intertwined in a way that is not separable, that never was separable. It's the same parts of the body that are affected, many of the same features that really led us to recognize that there was likely an alignment in the biology of the conditions and that there would be common solutions for people with these conditions. From the very beginning, the Marfan Foundation was welcoming. They were saying, yes, we understand that you have new aspects to your mission, but you know, we respect that cause, but also welcome you into our fold. We have expertise in the orthopedic and cardiovascular and cutaneous and ocular systems that we were willing to share. So, you know, again, I have to comment on the unwavering generosity of the Marfan Foundation. There was never a question but that we would be welcomed at their annual meeting. There was never a question that we were equal partners at the table in discussing priorities and common challenges and common solutions. So, you know, I view this as an alignment of commitment, an alignment of talent, an alignment of opportunity. And there is no sense of compromise. There is no sense of sadness that we are leaving something behind, because I just think that we are better together. I appreciate Corey's mention that the Loeys-Dietz Foundation and membership have lots to offer and perhaps some new ideas that the Marfan Foundation will benefit from. I just look at this as a new era, and I share in the excitement expressed by Gretchen and expressed by Beth that the days coming are going to be better than the days we're leaving behind, and that this is going to be a union that is far more than simple opportunity. There is going to be a glorious alignment of mission and purpose and creativity. And I am so excited and so proud to be part of the past and future of both of these organizations.
Thank you, Hal. Bart, we'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to add to this new partnership from your side of the world.
Yeah, the European side of the world. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this new beginning. I would like to echo what Hal already said and express my gratitude to what Don and Beth and Gretchen have done over the last couple of years. When I look at it, when I left Europe in 2001 to join Hal's lab, it was to learn about Marfan syndrome. That was the whole goal of my trip. And when I left in 2005, I left after we defined the genetic basis of the new condition. So for me, it's like a full circle, and it's not the beginning, not the end, but something that goes around and comes back to the beginning. And as Hal said, I think Marfan and Loeys-Dietz are natural partners, and they belong together. I think over the last couple of years, we've learned a lot, but we still have a lot to learn. When I left Hal's lab, we knew about 2 genes. I think we're up to 6 now, and there is more in the pipeline. We knew about a very specific syndrome, but we're now learning that there is a whole spectrum of disease that we want to learn more about, because I think that variability can learn us about things that modify severity and can help us to think about new treatment strategies. So I'm very excited, and for me it feels like coming home.
Thank you so much. I hope you'll stay awake a little longer for the rest of this to answer some questions as well.
My best.
Thank you both. Our next speaker tonight is the President and CEO of the Marfan Foundation, Michael Saylor.
Thanks, Eileen. Good evening, everybody. I think at this point I could probably just say thank you. This has been extraordinary. It's a wonderful evening. I think we are embarking on an extraordinary partnership. You know, there's moments in time where things shift, and we've all been struggling over the last few months with COVID-19 and other challenges in our society. And, you know, tonight's one of those moments where you really begin to reflect on the better days ahead. And what we've been dealing with, particularly as it relates to COVID-19, has been today. But what we've been talking about here really is the future, and really is the better days ahead. special thanks again to the Loeys-Dietz volunteers, Don, Gretchen, Beth, Linda. A wonderful effort to bring all this together. We're coming up on almost a year at this point of partnering together to bring you this opportunity this evening. We could not be more excited about the new chapter. We could not be more excited about serving a shared community. I'm sure we will continue some great activities of both organizations, but we'll also be building upon those, and I'm sure have new and interesting ideas to talk about in the months ahead. It's also really an honor to have Hal and Bart here this evening. And Gretchen, as you know, is one of a kind when it comes to serving the community. We're really blessed to have the three of you as professional leaders in addition to great volunteers and part of our shared mission. I also just want to take a moment and thank Beth Utz. I've been here 5 years in this role. I became a volunteer right around the year 2000, so about 20 years altogether. And the 5 years I've been here in this role, every time I've seen Beth Utz, she's talked about how can we better serve the related conditions. And Beth, we're now doing that. We're expanding what we've been able to do previously. And again, I'm excited at that opportunity as well. So most importantly, probably when I think of the journey we've been on, I'd really like to thank the Loeys-Dietz folks for the trust and confidence that they've placed in the Marfan Foundation and our team, of which we are now one team. So we deeply appreciate that. So with that said, you know, I get the pleasant role tonight of introducing you to the new Marfan Foundation Division Director for Loeys-Dietz. Anything we do is really the partnership between volunteers and staff, and you need great staff, you need great volunteers, and you need the synergy that brings about. So tonight, I'm glad to introduce you to this person, Angela Christ. I think maybe we'll see her on this route. There's Angela off to my left. Let me tell you a little bit about Angela. Prior to joining the Marfan Foundation, where she has been our director of marketing for the past several years, she served as the CEO of Hope House. It's a regional housing and homelessness services organization that focused on community-based leadership and growth. Before that, she was also the executive director of the Hancock County Visitors Bureau, expanding community activities. I'm not sure where Hancock County is. You know, we are largely a virtual organization these days, but I'm sure it's probably a little bit warmer and sunnier than New York today, so we're pleased with that. I also believe that Angela is an absolute perfect fit for this role. Given the focus of the priorities, her past experience, you know, you want somebody that has that ability to capture and work with the spirit of volunteerism. And we're absolutely convinced that Angela can do that. And I'm pleased to say that the board of directors of the Loeys-Dietz Foundation, after interviewing her several times, is also very pleased. So I'll stop there and I'll give to you our new director, Angela Christ.
Thanks so much, Michael. Oh, I got a little round of applause there from Michael. You know, one of the things I've had the fortunate opportunity to meet with Dawn and Beth. Oh, I've known Beth for a little while. Actually, Beth and I lived nearby to each other in a similar part of the world. And I got to meet Gretchen in the past year or so through work with the Marfan Foundation, and Dawn through this process. And the one thing that I hear over and over is how just truly impressive it is how much the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation has accomplished in the last 15 years. And I really feel like it would be impossible to overstate the talent and the dedication of these volunteers, both in the community and especially on the board of directors. So it's really an honor to be asked to work alongside this just inspiring group. You know, when I first began working with the Marfan Foundation almost 2 years ago, the very first family I met was at a Walk for Victory in Indiana. And they told me they were affected by Loeys-Dietz syndrome and that attending the Marfan Foundation annual conference had saved their husbands and dads' lives. And, I had only been working for the Marfan Foundation for a week at that point. So I didn't know anything, but I was instantly hooked on this community and this mission, the one that we now share. So I am so looking forward to spending more time with the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation leadership and volunteers to learn all about the ins and outs of the organization. And I'm looking forward to meeting many more members of the community. That is absolutely one of my favorite parts of working with the Marfan Foundation, and it'll just never stop. I just love meeting all of our community members and hearing your stories. And I'm excited to see what we will accomplish for the Loeys-Dietz syndrome community under this new partnership, because I look at these volunteers and the talent we have on the Marfan Foundation team, and I just really feel like we have a lot to look forward to.
Thanks so much, Angela. So I'm excited. I'm proud of you, and I'm just so excited about this coming together. It's really great for the future. I'm going to ask all of the panelists to put their video back on. We have a few questions, and so I will pose them. I'll put mine on too. So I will pose them to people. The questions are kind of all over the board. So we'll start with some organizational questions, and then we have a couple. I see one so far, medical question too. So again, I invite anybody who is participating to put their questions in the Q&A box. Right out of the box, Vincent wants to know, what about disorders like Ehlers-Danlos? Are they already affiliated with the Marfan Foundation? I don't know, Michael, if you want to take that.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So under the current umbrella of the Marfan Foundation, you have Marfan, you now have Loeys-Dietz, you have the Stickler involved people. I saw somebody online tonight from Stickler. We have just started a vascular Ehlers-Danlos division. And yes, we do lots of other activities with the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and so we share, we share back and forth with their group as well, which is terrific nationally and internationally. So we're close, but the groups that I mentioned are the specific groups that are currently aligned with the foundation.
All right, thank you. And let's get to the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation questions. Will we continue to hold a Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation conference, or will it be sunsetted and become a subset of the Marfan Foundation conference? I don't know. Dawn, Gretchen, do you want to share some thoughts on that?
I think Dawn should take a shot at that.
Okay.
So we have not made that decision yet. And one thing we can guarantee, there'll be some type of conference next year. Because the collaboration, the joining is officially it doesn't happen until July 1st. So we just started conversations. It will either be a Loeys-Dietz Syndrome conference like we've had in the past, or we will be joining in as a division, of course, the Marfan Foundation, and we will make sure that there is a community component, so there's a connection and we can all get to know each other on an intimate level.
Let me just, Eileen, let me just add to that very briefly. I think, we will have an 11-member advisory board of Loeys-Dietz volunteers that will be helping us make decisions like that. Mm-hmm. In the end, we're going to probably do what that group believes is best. Can we produce a conference that, one of the added advantages of the Marfan Foundation conference, the annual conference, it also has a medical clinic, which people come to from, the U.S. and internationally. On the other hand, I've been to the Loeys-Dietz Foundation conference as well, and it's a wonderful community event. So we need to balance all that and come up with the best solution for the Loeys-Dietz community.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to jump over to Hal and Bart for the medical question related to COVID-19. Vincent says, it looks like COVID-19 is also a vascular virus in addition to respiratory, and that ACE inhibitors can actually aid in prevention. Does that mean that Loeys-Dietz patients on losartan are actually better off than others? He just says it might be nice to have some benefit to having Loeys-Dietz and being on losartan.
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. It's known that both ACE inhibitors and medications like losartan, called angiotensin receptor blockers, can increase the amount of a protein in the body called ACE2. There was some concern that higher levels of ACE2 might make people more prone to COVID-19 infection, but that clearly is not the case. That question, I think, has now been asked and answered. There is some speculation that medications such as ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers may be protective in some way. Early data that are coming out are suggesting that that is true for ACE inhibitors. We don't yet have a clear answer with regard to angiotensin receptor blockers. But at a minimum, people can feel confident that the medications that they're taking for Loeys-Dietz syndrome or Marfan syndrome are not making them more vulnerable in any way. If anything, there may be a protective effect, but it's still early days in understanding that.
Great, thank you so much. And you know, Hal has already been really generous with his time earlier this spring, and he did a whole webinar answering questions related to COVID, and there were questions similar to this one on Marfan, Loeys-Dietz, so that is on our website. So I would recommend that you take a look at that, because that's really has a lot more information on COVID as well related to Loeys-Dietz. This might be a question for Bart, I don't know, or if somebody else wants to take this. Will there be a conference in Europe? My passport's ready.
Yeah. We hope you are allowed to come in. So the answer is yes, and I even have a date. So the last weekend of February in 2021, we would like to organize both a patient meeting and a physician educational event. So that would be February 27 and 28. And it's in the planning stages still, but the date is fixed, and we'll get out more news soon.
Are we coming to Belgium?
Yes, it'll probably be in Antwerp.
Okay, awesome. Okay, again, I think this is Bart again, another European question. What are doctors' thoughts on pairs procedure being done in Europe? Will it be approved in the US anytime soon? I don't know if Hal, you want to help out with that as well.
Bart, do you have a perspective that you'd like to share initially?
So the Pierce procedure is a procedure that was pioneered in London. I think they have now an experience that probably reaches out about 10 years at the maximum. I think initially people were a little bit hesitant and didn't really trust it, but I think over the years that has changed a little bit. To my viewpoint, it's still a little bit early to make the final judgment, and we'll need longer follow-up and more data and more patients that undergo that procedure. I know there is more than one center now in Europe that will offer this to both Marfan patients and LDS patients.
Can you tell us what it is briefly for anybody who doesn't know?
It's basically a wrapping procedure of the aortic root rather than replacing it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Hal, do you have anything that you want to add?
So in the pairs procedure, a model of that individual's aortic root is made using imaging methods, and then a very precise covering of that person's aortic root is designed and fabricated. I think that there are now some good data to suggest both efficacy and safety of that procedure in certain patient populations. I am not aware of substantial research that's been done to explore the relevance of that procedure specifically to people with Loeys-Dietz syndrome. So I would agree with Bart that I think that there are some promising indications, but it's too early to say that that is a validated and recommended procedure. I think everybody's individual circumstance will have to be considered by their physician and discussed with them with regard to risks and benefits. It looks promising in some contexts, and we'll have to see how broadly relevant it is to Loeys-Dietz syndrome.
Great, and thank you for that. And for anybody who is interested in this particular procedure, you may have seen that the Marfan Foundation is having an international summit towards the end of this summer with a lot of different presentations from experts from around the world. And we will be having a talk on this PAIRS procedure. So that'll be a good time to tune in and learn more about it. Michael had hoped that all of these questions were going to be medical, so he wouldn't be put on the spot, and he's getting his wish. So the next question again is medical. Kathleen wants to know, is it very common for a person to have Loeys-Dietz, VEDS, musculocontractural EDS, mast cell activation syndrome, and high levels of mycotoxins? It sounds like she's asking if you can have them all at the same time. And we do hear questions frequently from people, do some of these conditions overlap? So Hal or Bart, if you could help us out with that.
So the answer is certainly yes, that some of these connective tissue diagnoses show overlapping features. The answer to whether it's likely or common that someone would have so many different diagnoses, I think the answer would most definitely be no. My hunch would be that perhaps many of the physical findings that this individual is experiencing can be explained by one of those diagnoses. But I don't, the first tendency should be to try to understand all of the physical features based upon a minimum number of diagnoses rather than to keep adding diagnoses, because the chances of that are simply so small that someone would have that many different conditions.
Great, thank you so much. Here's a question I'm going to pose to Gretchen. How does LDS Canada fall into this situation with the foundation in the US and the Marfan Foundation? Is that a consideration somewhere?
Yeah, so the LDSF Canada, they are really great advocates for patients with Loeys-Dietz syndrome, providing a lot of resources in Canada for connecting people to their specialty clinics and providing a lot of information in different languages. So they are not under this umbrella of this division or partnership, but they continue to be really great advocates for Loeys-Dietz syndrome in kind of their own capacity. And I'll just briefly touch upon the fact that I know we have some international guests here today, and we get those questions a lot about LDSF or Marfan Foundation going international. And we appreciate everyone coming to our website and being part of our community. We're super excited that this was our first awareness month, that we were able to send swag and really involve more of our international community. And so we love you. We're really working on services, hopefully also with Angela, to increase our capability to have different translations of our resources. So you're on our radar, but we just love that you're part of our community.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. And I guess along the same lines, Michael, Corey, is the Marfan Foundation considering interacting with patients, groups, associations, and our scientists working on connective tissue disorders in other parts of the world? And this question comes from Chile.
Corey, would you like, Corey has been a big advocate for expanding the international footprint of the foundation. Would you like to take a shot at that one first, Corey?
Sure, I could make a few general comments, Michael, and you can add on. I would say, first of all, we recognize there's a need in a community internationally. There are, just mathematically, there are more people affected by these conditions outside the US than there are inside the US. And so we, recognize that need is there. The foundation has worked for a long time, I would say fairly proactively, sponsoring research and symposiums and so on. It's been historically a little more on the research and the medical side and a bit less on maybe some of the patient awareness sides, although there are existing Marfan groups really around the world, UK, Japan, throughout Europe, and so on. So there's a lot happening already, and I think longer term, we'd like to see those things strengthen and grow and form better relationships with those international locations. Michael, maybe you want to say a few words about our new virtual summit that's being put together.
So
Yeah, I could add on. So the E3 summit, which Eileen mentioned, is happening for 13 days, late August into September. We will have over 50 presentations. I think there'll be over 25 physicians and other related professionals involved. Some of the programs will be in 5 different languages. We'll be doing some sessions directly focused on the European audiences, also Spain. So it's really the largest undertaking we've ever had at the foundation, and we think it's a great way to cap off a difficult summer and launch the foundation into the next calendar year. So we're very excited about it. It's under development right now. It will have international play and international flavor, and so does Aortic Disease Awareness Day, which you can also find on our website, which is a major international event as well.
great, thank you so much. I just want to jump over. Somebody did put a question in the chat box, but I happened to see it. So Hal, can you tell us how many people in the US have been diagnosed with Loeys-Dietz as compared to Marfan syndrome?
Yeah, we don't have very precise answers to that question at this time. As a general impression, it seems that Loeys-Dietz syndrome is less frequent than Marfan syndrome. We currently estimate that approximately 1 in 5 to 10,000 people worldwide have Marfan syndrome. Based upon numbers that I know, I would perhaps estimate that Loeys-Dietz syndrome is about a quarter as common, perhaps a little bit, perhaps a fifth as common as Marfan syndrome. But so many people have not had the opportunity to be seen by physicians that are aware of these conditions. There are many people out there with Loeys-Dietz syndrome who have yet to be diagnosed. So I think we can look forward to more precise answers to that important question.
Thank you. Sorry, I muted myself for a second there. Another medical question about Loeys-Dietz syndrome and GI issues and difficulty gaining weight. The question is it best that patients who present with these issues first address allergies at the risk of losing more weight, or see gastrointestinal specialists or another approach?
I would strongly recommend getting a comprehensive assessment by a pediatric gastroenterologist upon realization that a child with Loeys-Dietz syndrome is having difficulty gaining weight, and especially if they're falling off their growth curve. There are many possible reasons for problems with gaining weight in someone with Loeys-Dietz syndrome, but some of them can be serious. All of them can be addressed or treated. So I would have a high incentive to get an early diagnosis, and I think that assessment should include a pediatric gastroenterologist.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a little break from the medical side and go over back to the organizational side. Jordan is curious about how finances and fundraising for research specifically will be shared between and across the 2 organizations. Hal, you'll be happy to know that he's most concerned about fundraising for your lab and also finances for the new director position. I don't know who, if Corey or Dawn or Michael, if you want to talk about that. You're on mute, Michael.
I will start. We're also glad to have Hal's lab, as you might guess. Our research program is really ecumenical in many ways. You know, we are peer reviewed. We try to fund the best research that comes available based on the areas of priority that are established each year. We already have a partnership preceding this partnership to actually manage on behalf of the Loeys-Dietz Foundation their research efforts. They also have a restricted grant, though, that is or will be used only for Loeys-Dietz funded research. And I think right now it's been cardiovascular focused. Don or Gretchen, do you want to pick up on that?
Sure. So we last year had an incredibly generous matching grant from the Williams family. They put up a matching grant of $100,000. We started it during our awareness month, which is June, obviously, and continued it for 2 months and raised another $100,000. So we have a $200,000 restricted grant for cardiovascular research, and we look forward to spending that and really making a difference.
Great. Does anybody else want to address? I mean, the other part of the question was about financing the staff position.
So,
Don, do you want to talk about? Yeah, why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation, the money that we raise specifically for Loeys-Dietz will be in a restricted budget that will go towards paying for the director and other Loeys-Dietz programming and research. We have an incredibly healthy foundation, so we've been planning on hiring this staff for a year and have the dollars to do so, and know that we will continue to be able to support this person.
Great, thank you for that. Anything else to add from?
Yeah, I was just going to briefly add that this is one of the strength areas that the Marfan Foundation has historically had. We've consistently grown the fundraising at the Marfan Foundation, and we have a terrific team at the foundation who helps us do that. My strong hope and expectation is that we can help bring some of that expertise to the Loeys-Dietz Foundation and grow our fundraising efforts and increase the amount of funding that we're able to direct toward Loeys-Dietz research and support and awareness. This is actually something that everyone who's joined us can play a role in this evening. There's lots of ways to get involved, community events, online fundraising, and so on, and look forward to working with everyone to help grow that funding.
I also want to add that we have for anybody who hasn't been at one of our walks for victory, and we know we've had these all over the country, and we always have families with Loeys-Dietz, but you know, we look forward to having more Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation teams. We have a virtual walk this weekend with an online party, and I know we have Team Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation. I will put the URL in the box here and send it as a follow-up, so you can all register and be part of that. It's going to feature. I know Michael's really excited about this. The former White House DJ, Willie Wow. It's going to be a fun online event. It's 45 minutes in the afternoon, but you'll see it's part of a really fun community. And so through Team Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation, Team LDS, you'll be able to raise money and connect with community directly for Loeys-Dietz as well. So we're excited about that. You know, the more the better. We're all genetic cousins here, so. We're excited.
I'm actually looking forward to coming early and being with DJ Willie. So that's a big day for me Saturday.
It is. We know. Everybody bring your spirit clothes. It's a fun day. All right, back to some medical information. Hal, Bart, can either of you provide, or both of you provide highlights as to the latest discoveries around Loeys-Dietz syndrome?
So as Bart mentioned, we continue to better understand the pathways that lead to medical problems in Loeys-Dietz syndrome. Part of that effort is through identification of new genes for the condition. Part of that effort relates to ongoing characterization of mice with engineered Loeys-Dietz syndrome. And part of that effort relates to work that's going on both in our lab and Bart's lab to try to identify so-called modifiers of Loeys-Dietz syndrome, to understand why some people with the condition have more mild forms of the disease as compared to even family members with the same mutation. You know, how does nature protect some but not all people with Loeys-Dietz syndrome? We have new insights coming from all those avenues. As is our usual practice, whenever we get some new insight, we try to think of a therapeutic angle, how to perhaps use a drug to achieve the same form of protection. So I have sensed that there's good progress and a really refreshing group of young people who are entering the field. There is a huge effort that has been spearheaded and financed to an extent by the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation to build a registry that will allow us to pool the information from patients across the country and across the world, to try to share all of our experiences and to recognize important paradigms and messages early. You know, if one hospital is only seeing 10 people with Loeys-Dietz syndrome, they might miss an early signal regarding a better treatment strategy. But if 50 hospitals are sharing their information, those lessons will emerge much more quickly. So stay tuned with regard to more information about registries and efforts to develop these precision medicine initiatives.
Thank you all so much. There are a few more very specific medical questions. I think we'll follow up with people on that. As Michael had mentioned earlier, we do have a help and resource center that's staffed by a nurse who is on staff at Jan Lynch, and she's wonderful. And we will send her these questions, and she will answer them and with help from Bart and Hal and other doctors as needed. And we'll send that link so you can reach her directly yourself when we do the follow-up email tomorrow or the next day. So you'll have direct access to Jan all the time. So with that, it's been about an hour, and I think it's been a really wonderful hour seeing all these great leaders here. Does anybody have any final words before we close tonight? Raise your hand. Everybody's said their piece. So anyway, we'll continue talking. I mean, we're all really looking forward to working with all of you, meeting people in your community, and just moving the whole area forward for everybody's benefit. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you especially to Bart for staying awake tonight, and anybody else that we kept up till 8 o'clock. So thank you all so much, and have a great night. Any other questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Congratulations.
Thank you.